Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Walker, and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Stacy Spikes' debut memoir, Black Founder, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after 95 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers and writers, we wouldn't be here today. Tonight, we are thrilled to have Stacy Spikes with us for a discussion of his debut memoir, Black Founder, The Hidden Power of Being an Outsider. Stacy Spikes is an award-winning entrepreneur and inventor who USA Today named one of the 21 most influential Black individuals in technology. He holds several technology patents and is the co-founder and CEO of the nation's first theatrical subscription service, MoviePass. In addition, Spikes is the founder of Urban World, the largest international festival dedicated to nurturing women and BIPOC filmmakers. Joining Stacy in conversation is Genna Mark. Genna Mark is a sports and entertainment producer, on-air talent, content creator, and philanthropist from Miami, Florida. She has spent more than a decade in the television business, where she's covered every major sporting event, from multiple NBA finals to college football games, movie junkets, and red carpet events. She hosted a travel segment for a show called SoFlo Health that airs on WPLG in South Florida and currently features freelances for various outlets. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Stacy and Genna to the stage.
Hello.
It's fun, right? This is crazy. So good to see you. Anyway. Hello.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Stacy,
Thank
how you doing?
Thank you for having me.
Let's get into it because there's so much to discuss and unpack. But first question for you. Why release Black Founder now when there's still so much to come with MoviePass?
I wanted to make sure there was room for a part 2. Second book. But originally, we didn't even know that we were going to get MoviePass back. So originally, when we were writing it, it was a tragic story about a guy losing everything. And it was just like, here's what not to do, how your life shouldn't end up. And then we got it back. So it's a totally different story. It wasn't planned that way.
So you said it, you lost everything. So let's go to that place for a minute where you're at MoviePass and you need investors to finance the company to keep it going. And your gut tells you you don't want to go with this investor, you do it anyway. You end up fired from the company and really having to reevaluate. And in the book, you say you were working there before you got fired and you were powerless in the company that you created. What was that like?
It's not fun. So, the people, one of the things about writing the book was I really wanted young founders and people who are going to make businesses to understand that there's certain power structure in the voting structure of the board. And that's what I meant about you realize you don't have the power and you're sitting in that board seat, but you're suddenly outranked, and how easily in a business meeting they actually can fire you, they can change the structure of things, and you don't have the power over that. And that, it's kind of like what they don't teach you in school. There's all these things about, we'll read the stories and you'll see young founder wrote code, I wrote ChatGPT, and I'm rich now, right? But it's different when you're grinding it out over years, and you have years that things aren't going the way that you hoped, and it changes, right? And that structure changes. The moment you and your members of the board are out of sync, once it goes from 3 to 2 or 2 to 3 or whatever, the whole thing shifts. So
And then following that, you're still a shareholder, but you're no longer working at the company that you built, and you're sitting there watching this ship sink, literally, but you can't do anything. So what was harder for you? The powerless and being in it, or being removed and having to watch that all unfold?
what was weird was it's slightly different. It was so a little bit of setup. You guys all know this story, but when the new owners came in, they were like, "Let's lower the price to $10. That'll be great." And we agreed to do it for, 100,000 people. That's it, right? And then we're going to turn it off. And it was like, maybe it'll take. What do we think? 6 months? We thought it would take maybe 6 months? Okay. So we thought maybe it'll take 6 months or whatever to get there. And we got to 100,000 in 48 hours. And it was like, whoa, turn it off. And they were like, oh, isn't this exciting? Look how fast we're growing. And meanwhile, all we did was point the plane to the ground and put it into a nosedive. And so once I'm fired and at home, what you're really sitting there thinking is, on one part, I hope I'm right when I told them this isn't going to work out. But on the other side, it's your baby, and you don't want to see something happen to it. And so you're kind of torn between those two of being right or you're wrong. But unfortunately, I was right.
What in this entire roller coaster of MoviePass do you wish you knew that you know now?
I wrote a book about it. I mean, the biggest thing was, I think, I had a pretty successful track record in the entertainment industry. I had made a lot of people money and had done, pretty well. I think the thing I wish I had known, and I'm careful to not call it racism, but I would say typecasting or stereotyping. I wish I had known that even if you had that kind of success, and I had built Urban World, but with all of that, walking into someone's office, I still wasn't where some kids were in their 20s that were dropping out of Stanford, right? And I wish I had known that, and I think I would have, if I knew I maybe couldn't have raised the money, I would have treated the raising process different and far more cautious about, when you first get going, you're gonna get rich, you're gonna make it, and you're throwing out equity, and you're like, yeah, come on, we're all going, we're gonna be rich, this is gonna be great. And you get up there, and then your equity runs out, and everything, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, how did I get here? And that's probably the biggest thing I would have known. And I feel bad for investors now when they're having a conversation with me. I'm a totally different human being. I would have been more that person with the knowledge of how things, we all think, every entrepreneur really thinks, yeah, but I'm going to make it. And the rule of thumb, Michael knows this, it's like everything costs twice as much, takes twice as long, and you're going to run out of capital twice as fast as you think. And it's like, but you just don't, there's this hubris that you actually need to be crazy enough to do it. And you've got to be Jekyll and Hyde. And I think in hindsight, I can be those two sides of myself easier than when you doing it for the first time.
So you said you apologize to investors that you're different now, but why apologize for it?
Oh, it's just a courtesy. Like, I'm sorry, I know too much now. I'm different, so.
So you brought up urban world, and I think that's such a poignant part of your story. Everyone sees MoviePass and all that, but you created a film festival that literally changed cultures in the movie industry. I mean, you've said it yourself that it's to movies what the Apollo was to music. So you had this huge success rate, and then you go to MoviePass. How did you balance yourself and say, wait, I'm recreating something? I can't think I'm gonna just hit it out of the park like I did the first time.
Yeah, I think Gretchen, who's our COO, we talk about this all the time, but I I know how our industry is. We do not win prizes in the innovation and change department. So you kind of know that. You know you're going to be in there and people are going to, not rah, rah, rah. Oh, yeah, new technology, come on in. It's the opposite of that. And it's a handful of guys who are, making decisions very slowly. And they go in these really long cycles. Don't talk to me in the summer. Don't talk to me at Christmas. Maybe you can talk to me while I'm walking down the hall at CinemaCon for a moment. But and you got these big cycles that you have to wait to get these moments of people's attention. And so that was a big part of keeping you humble and having, you're going to have to go through a lot of cycles about that. So.
Even with the success that you had.
Oh, they didn't care about that. If you're not a theater owner, they don't care. If you're not a theater owner or a studio, they don't care.
Noted. So you start the book. I'm not going to give away too many details for any of you that haven't read it yet, but you start the book.
It's a good book, by the way.
It is a really good book. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Why do you start there?
You ever heard the saying, even a broken clock is right, twice a day? It's like if you just keep going and keep trying, you'll get there, right? Just don't quit. Just keep going, and whatever it'll take, but you're going to get knocked down. It's not going to work out. It's just not going to go the way you want. You might start with the product over here and end up with something over there. But that's the if you don't buy the book and don't read it, the moral of the story is fall down 7 times, stand up 8, right? That's it. There you go. I saved you some money.
Don't tell them that.
I know, right?
Read the book.
Yeah, you won't get the good stuff if you just listen to a headline. So it's that. I think the most important thing is perseverance. You got to be part crazy, but you also have to be. You need something that goes. I'm gonna mess up his name. Did you ever see the talk of the guy? His speech was about walls are designed to keep people out who don't really want it bad enough. And he has this great talk. If I remember his name, I'll say it. But it's one of the best talks about entrepreneurship that I've ever heard. And he's like, walls aren't designed to stop people because they don't. They can't. You'll go over it, you'll go under it, or you'll go through it. But it's designed to stop the ones who just aren't willing to go through, around, or over, or under the wall. And so it thins the herd, right? And so it's the thinning of the herd because the VCs are like, yes, let's throw a lot of money at the seed. Then, each subsequent round, there's fewer players and they're cutting bigger checks. Why? Because there's just these, so many of the seed aren't going to make it to the Series A. So many of the A's aren't going to make it to B. And the C's and D's and the exits, the numbers get so small that's the wall, right? Can you keep going through the wall? My wonderful wife remembers my insane idea of me walking out of the shower going, what if there was a Netflix for movie theaters? And she's like, that's nice, honey. That was 2004, 2005. And like, we're still here trying to make it happen. So if you not ready to go the distance and run through those walls, you're not going to ever succeed. There's no way to make it.
So, speaking of not running and stopping when you hit the wall, you did hit a wall, and then you basically were given a second chance at it. What makes MoviePass, I call it 3.0, 2.0 with Stacy's involvement, but 3.0, what makes it different than the original MoviePass in the lessons that you've learned?
From a business standpoint, or
From the creator standpoint.
Even today, businesses are data and information, and it's constantly evolving. So even if let's say there wasn't a break, there wasn't a pandemic, nothing happened, I never lost the company, we would still be in a constant evolutionary state where you are constantly rebuilding the business and it's changing underneath your feet all the time. I think so many people think, I got it, I have it figured out, that's it, it's done. And I mean, the minute, when you look at even what's happening in the AI space, how fast everything's changing, every business is reacting. It's like, who's this Elon Musk guy talking about electric cars? Oh, don't mind him. The electric car, they tried that. It's never going to happen. And Ford doubles down on, and Dodge goes in on a new Charger that guzzles more gas than you can imagine. And then all of a sudden, in like 24 months, they're all like, no more gas cars. We're all going electric, right? Because it changes so fast underneath your feet all the time in businesses like that. And so you constantly are using data, information, and intelligence to stay on the edge. And I think that's a really big difference. Like you gotta play with the new technologies that are constantly evolving, and how's that going to affect your business?
So speaking of the affecting of the business, I mean, MoviePass shifted in its creation because you started it originally to highlight movies by Black people, people of color, because you found that wasn't something that existed. So when all of a sudden it's like, let's do this for everybody, how do you frame your mindset to go much bigger than you envisioned yourself?
Yeah, so sometimes people will point you to something that you're not thinking about. So when I went to a meeting and we were presenting it to Travis Reed, who was running Lowe's at the time. And Travis was the one who said, Travis, we're going to make this thing that lets subscribers go see Black movies. And they're going to, everyone from Urban World is going to sign up, and that's what we're going to do. And Travis was the one who said, why not do it for all movies? He said, I think Hollywood could probably use something like that. You should make it for everything. So it wasn't my first thought. I was still playing infield ball, and he was like, go for the bleachers up there, right? But he said, I think this is needed for all movies. And he actually said, I think it'll be easier going for everything than going small the way you're thinking. I was like, wow, okay. And that's kind of the universe saying, go right, take a right turn here.
So how do you listen to those, whether it's that specific thing or anything, when you're creating something and there's people coming in telling you change this, change that? How do you know when to listen and take that on, or when to stick to what you envisioned and you imagined?
I mean, that one was a little bit easier because Travis was running the third or fourth largest circuit in the country. And if I said, no, Travis, we're just going to make this for Black people, I think Travis would have got bored with it. But when I said, yes, let's make it for everyone, Travis then opened up Lowe's code. And so we're going to take you way, way back, way back. So MoviePass was actually originally called Movies Unlimited. And we actually did it through SMS protocol. You actually would text message the movie you wanted to see. And this is going back to BlackBerry for some of you who This is before the iPhone, and there was no, there were still buttons on a phone. And so what Travis let me do was we built the technology out of Australia, and Travis made all of Lowe's code available, and we built the first what became MoviePass off of SMS protocol. So you would just say, I want to see, Top Gun. And then it will respond, and you would put in a zip code, and it would give you 5 choices. Then you would pick, theater number 1, 2, or 3, and then it would respond back, and you'd go back and forth, and then it would confirm the ticket, and you would go to the kiosk. And I remember walking into Lowe's 34th Street and punching in that confirmation number at one of their kiosks, and it spit out a ticket. And that was so cool to feel that happen. And that we did that with Travis. And I think if I said, no, Travis, we want to play small, I really don't think he would have been as vested in it. But having someone that big lean into your idea, you go the way God's calling you.
You listen.
Yeah.
When it comes to listening, I'm not going to give the details away, because trust me, the book is better than my version. But you listened to so many people, and all of us, our parents all say, listen to your gut. It's the first right instinct that you're going to have. You didn't with the investor. What would you change? Obviously a different investor, but what would you change about that entire process that would have maybe changed the way MoviePass unfolded?
I mean, it's a scary thought, but if we didn't do the deal, we were going to run out of money. Maybe you let it go on ice and you come back and try and raise money, but you can die from that. You can run out of money, and people will be like, no one's going to fund you. So I think I still, if I had the same information, I had no foresight to know what was going to happen, I think I still would have made the same decision. I think side story, I once met Ben from Ben and Jerry's. And Ben, they had sold Ben and Jerry's, and he wanted to make an ice cream theme park. And he had come to Sony and was pitching it. And it was so cool because they took a bathroom break and everyone left, and it was me and Ben in the room. And I said, Ben, can I ask you a question? And I said, what's the best thing you ever learned about, Ben and Jerry's? And he said, sometimes you have to build it wrong to know how to build it right. And what he told me was the first version of Ben and Jerry's, it was another name, they listened to people, and in the ice cream business, you'd whip the cream really fast, and you would just put nuts and stuff on the top. And he said they built that business, and it went out of business. And then when he and Jerry did it a second time, he said, we were 2 fat guys from Vermont, and we wanted our ice cream to be like we wanted. And he talked about they would crumble up cookies, and they would put it all in. They would just put it in there and then freeze it. And he said, every investor said, you're going to go out of business. You're giving them too many ingredients. You have to do this and this and this, and you can't charge over this amount. And he's like, we had better sales than Haagen-Dazs. And so he did do what they said the first time. I did do what they thought the first time. But then you come back and you build it better the next time.
So what's the biggest lesson that you take into building it better now?
It's all data. It's all, in 2016, we were playing around with the credit idea in 2016. And so we were going to get there. So there were 2 businesses that were born very close to each other. It was us and ClassPass. And ClassPass actually had a different name, and we started getting traction with MoviePass, and they then changed their name to ClassPass. And so we were both kind of figuring out these, you have B2B where you're servicing locations, and then you have B2C where you're servicing these subscribers that you want with these locations. And the locations are like herding cats, right? So we had a lot of the same problems. How much do I get a pass at this gym, or how much do I get a pass at this theater, right? So ironically, we were both heading in the same direction, and ClassPass went to a credit system, and we ended up kind of going there at the same time. So now that's working much better, where the first version, I don't think the first version was going to be sustainable. It needed to get modified. So over time with data, you make it different.
Okay, so let's rewind. Really rewind. You talked about perseverance and resilience, and those are two key themes in the book, but those are things that you discuss as virtues that aren't just for the boardroom, right? I mean, you move to LA, you have to have resilience on your first day. Not going to give the story away. But is that something that comes from within? Is it something that you have to have the right people around you in order to find it? And how do you not lose it? Because you've held on to it through so many ups and downs.
So I don't know if my answer is going to make sense, but this is what it is for me. I am a descendant of slaves who I remember my great-grandmother meeting her, and she described slavery. And my grandmother cleaned houses her whole life, and on my father's side. My grandmother on my mother's side was a seamstress and sewed curtains her whole life, third grade education, and sent 5 kids to college. My parents were the first ones in America that black people could go to college. My parents' generation, the first time black people could go to college. This is the first time a black man who didn't go to college can be a CEO and an entrepreneur and go fund a business. I can't quit. There was way too much sacrifice that these people did for me to sit in this chair up here in front of you to go, what, I had a bad day? My business failed? They didn't even have the choice to have a business to fail, right? And they had 5 jobs. My parents had till I left home, they all had multiple, they had 2, 3 jobs, both of them, just to make things, meet. And so when I feel down, I think about them, and I think about what would they be saying to me on those dark days. And some people talk about the ancestors. I hear them. I hear them say, keep going. I hear them say, don't stop. I hear them say, write that book, because there's some kid who's, they say it, if you can't see it, you can't be it. It's like, write the book. Put your face on the book against everybody who said you couldn't and wouldn't fund you. Keep going, right? And so when I leave the stage, maybe I made it better for them. And that's, you keep playing it forward, because whether you were Jewish or Irish or black or whatever, we all went through stuff to get here, and I stand on their shoulders. So how can I ever quit?
So the answer made sense. So what if someone comes to you that doesn't have that background of a story to tell and says, how do I find it? How do I hold on to it? Because it's, I think, more difficult to hold on to it and a lot easier to, I had a bad day. What do you tell them?
There's this saying, if you look far into the past of kings, you will find slaves. And if you look far into the past of slaves, you will find kings. So if you look far enough back, you will find that narrative that will tell you, get up and get out of your bed and stop feeling sorry for yourself. You're not dead. Your feelings are hurt. Your ego's hurt. You're mad at LinkedIn. It's like, what's your LinkedIn status that you had to go change it? I remember I didn't want to change it. And then when I finally changed it to pre-show, I remember somebody said, you own MoviePass again. You should change it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should go change my LinkedIn.
Did you change it?
I don't know. I forgot.
So, can we talk about Urban World for a minute? Because so often, we were just talking about this, right? Steve Jobs probably had to build 9 million wrong phones to come up with the one that now dictates all of our lives. You came from such a successful creation with Urban World Film Festival, and then the reverse happened where the ups and downs started to come. How did you juggle that after coming from such a high of this successful film festival that literally transcended the industry?
My wife, whom I love, is sitting right here in the front row. She knows the outside image of what Urban World was and the inside image of it are really different things. And so I'm very grateful that we created such a spectacular image of something great, which it is. It's not, but what it took, how you got there, and even that in the tradition to MoviePass. MoviePass was born out of desperation because the festival, we just kind of had this once a year we would make some money. You would make money half the year and be broke half the year. And we ran it out of our apartment. It's like, and so yeah, it kind of got up on its feet, but MoviePass was a way to, how can we do this year round? How can we take these really big movie fans and supercharge them with something that's going to engage filmmakers and them together? And so it was born out of necessity. It's born out of desperation. It looks one way from the outside, but you're trying to figure out how to get your mortgage paid, It's not sexy.
So you do this very comically, which is interesting because I didn't anticipate that. But you have said to me in the past that you created this book because you want other people behind you to not feel the same way you did, not go through the same things. Why? Because those are lessons that actually do probably become valuable down the road. You can't see it when it's happening.
Yeah. Growing up, I would read religiously biographies. It's just what I love to do. And so often a situation would come about, and I would literally think about, well, what did Richard Branson do when British Airways cut out the ability for them to land in JFK and Los Angeles? And what did Sumner Redstone do when the studios wouldn't allow them to play first-run movies, right? And when I read all of those stories, right, all my books that I read were all white men, and I think I read Billie Jean King. That was like one of the outliers. But the thing about Billie Jean has this great line. She says, "Pressure is privilege," and I love that. I'll come back to that. But in the point being is, those books did something for me when I was on the battlefield and I need to call on data to tell me what to do in this situation. I read David Geffen. I read Sam Walton. I read, all of these books, and these people were in my head. And I thought, we're entering a new phase of technology, and the wealth gap is happening so astronomically fast that I felt like the biggest siren call is in our communities. We're still saying, be a doctor, be a lawyer, play ball, run fast. And I'm like, code, learn to code. And there's stuff that's happening so fast and changing the world that I really think it's important. I felt like it's my point to be standing at this point on this mountaintop to scream that young people, you know, give them another option. If they want to start tapping on a keyboard early, give it to them. Let them be a geek. But and that's the part that I felt like, all right, I'm going to add my voice into this lexicon and do what so many did for me, even though they didn't know that they were doing it.
No, not the wrong answer.
Long answer.
Oh, long answer. That's okay. So pressure is a privilege. Let's talk about it.
Well, like, you know, going back to the ancestors, when you're sitting in this situation, that pressure you feel is an honor and a privilege to represent people, your people. You're not walking into that boardroom as yourself. You're not walking into those VCs. People say, how do you get confidence with all the rejection? And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm walking in with legacies of people behind me. And they're all saying, go, you know. And if they say no, you know, B. Smith always said, you have to stand on a mountain of no's to reach the yes. And it's like the no is just sharpening your blade, right? It's not no. It's that craft of anything that gets honed, gets rubbed up against something, even in nature. It's like something becomes sharper and better because it's the friction against something. I think Benjamin Franklin said, the higher the wind, the higher the kite, you know. And that's what that is. And so it's the pressure is an honor to be able to sit in this position. I mean, guys, I'm at the Strand with a book. It's like that's such
That's
an
your
honor,
face on it.
right? It's like that's insane. So that's the part that if that gets to help one person and one founder, one kid not quit when they're going to lose all their money and they're not going to be sure how they're going to pay their rent and their phone just got cut off, all of that stuff, and they want to give up, they're going to go, well, Stacy ran into that too. He didn't die. Maybe I can keep going. That's how it works.
And it's not just for creating a business. It's for every aspect and area of life, which you show so many times throughout the book. Did you do that intentionally?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I had a wonderful editor who was like, she kept saying, you're speaking like a CEO going from one point to the next. You need to tell stories about how you felt on the inside. I know you're a man and you don't want to get in touch with your feelings, but I need you to do that. It's like, oh, okay.
So can we talk about one of those stories? I think you know which one it's going to be. There's a story in the book where you talk about a movie producer premiering his movie at Urban World, and you know the exact story I'm going with. And the whole premiere just goes wrong for him. And he looks at you and he says, that's it, I'm leaving. And the award shows were the next day for the festival, and you convince him to stay. Disclaimer, he wins the award. Did you know when you convinced him to stay, did you know that he was going to win that award?
No. So the backstory is Dave Talbert, who, if you can look, Dave's got some great stuff that he did Jingle Jangle for Netflix not too long ago. Anyway, it's the first Urban World, it's the first festival, and they brought what's called an unmarried print. One set of reels is the picture, and the other set of reels is the sound. Like, who shows up at a film festival like that? And so we were trying to sync it up, and the voices kept coming out of sync. They just don't. The projections, like, nobody does this. This isn't, and it kept going wrong and wrong and wrong. And it's a premiere. I mean, his family, everybody. He's from Atlanta. Everybody, and now he's in Las Vegas. But everybody traveled for this thing, and it's a disaster. And everyone's like, so he decides, he's like, turn it off. And everybody's like, oh, good job. You know, I love you. You good. And afterwards, that night, he and his guys were like, well, let's save money on a hotel and let's just leave. And they were going back to the hotel. And I said, but the awards are tomorrow. It's like, how are we going to win after that? And I said, but the jury saw it on videotapes. They didn't see what happened there. You should show up. He was like, so his whole crew left the next morning. They got on planes, and he came to the award show. And it was our first award show, and he won Best Picture. And he got up there, and he started crying. And he said, and I almost left. And to this day, every time Dave comes back to Urban World, and he showed Jingle Jangle, which stars, come back to me in a second, he talks about that story. He wanted to quit. He wanted to go home. And I said, stay. What happens? What? Okay, you were gonna spend the hotel money anyway. And that's the constant thread through it all. Is just keep showing up. It'll work out,
All right, so 2 more questions. Okay. You spoke about Elon Musk, so let's talk about artificial intelligence in the movie business. Okay. Is it taking over?
Will it take over? I can see. So I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I've been playing with GPT, and I've been playing with Midjourney and some other things, and I can't see why you can't say, I want you to write me a script that says blah 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 blah, and it'll put out a script. I still believe, sure, some artists are going to take that path. But the thing about the human spirit that comes up with things that you just can't tell, that craftsmanship, I still think there's something there that even if that person does say take that script, they'll need to make it leap to another place. Because if not, everyone's going to just say something and have it come out. And when you see a movie, so many things have to come together to make that movie work. Everything from the script was great, but boy, that actor or actress just wasn't the part. They just didn't work. Or when you'll hear somebody, how many times have we heard an actor say, was that line in the script? And they say, nope, it wasn't. It was just something we were playing around with on set. So I think that there's a lot of fear about it's going to take over everything. But I think it's just another tool. So let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. When I was sitting watching Avatar, the whole time I kept going, this is not real. This is not real. This is not real. Like, there's not really people in the water swimming on this, because it looks so good. We were playing around where special effects, you could always kind of see around the edges of things, but it was just, and that's technology. That's AI. And it's still telling beautiful stories. And I think that telling beautiful stories will never change.
I agree with you. Okay, final question. So you now have been given this second chance, so to speak, with MoviePass, which not many people get, right? What would you tell your 25, 30-year-old self now, knowing everything you know?
I would tell that younger self to not worry as much. I would say it's going to be okay. I would say treat your wife better and be nicer. don't freak out and go like, I just couldn't help myself. It would just own me. The impending doom if I fail. If I fail, it's just like, and I would say, it's okay. It's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be. Just keep showing up. Just keep going. Just keep going. That would be the big thing that I would say and I say that several times. There's these points that your brain. I remember falling or going through a breakup in high school, believing I would never survive or ever meet another person. And it's like that. It's like you think there's nothing beyond high school. And it was like, there's nothing beyond MoviePass. I'll never survive. No one will ever love me and care for me. I'm gonna be homeless in the subway. I like the commercial with Ben Affleck and Jennifer, where the Dunkin' Donuts, and it's like, is this what you're doing when you say you're at work? I would be in the subway panhandling for money to try and pay the bills. I didn't, but anyway, I did become willing at one point to go to UPS and load trucks if that's what I had to keep a roof over my family's head. I remembered what my parents went through. I remember them having multiple jobs. I remember making a game out of rolling coins and going to the bank and depositing it, coupons and coupons and coupons of Pizza Hut pizza, and like eating so much Pizza Hut pizza. And then I realized, wait, they were doing that because we didn't have anything else. Buy one, get one free, and mom putting them in the fridge. But you did what you had to. And so I would say you can't avoid the tough times, but you're going to be okay.
I think that's a perfect place to end. Thank you. Oh, he's going to do it.
We do have a time for a short Q&A. If anyone has a question, raise your hand. We'll bring you a microphone. Tico, I see one right up here.
This is sort of a question. But I first want to say, I'm glad you wrote all this down, Stacy. But as someone who has known you for 20 years, as someone who has been alongside you as an entrepreneur, you've been an inspiration to me and many, many others for the whole time. So I'm glad you've now written it down for posterity, but this isn't the beginning of inspiring people. My question after the thank you is, I'm so excited that you have MoviePass back. What are you gonna do? Like specifically, how are you gonna make it fly now?
So, Michael, thank you. So the difference was to tweak the model so that it can be profitable and really stick to all the data and what we had learned, and just quickly by slowly just keep going, right? And one of the things that was so cool during the pandemic was watching kids post MoviePass stuff on TikTok. Like, I want MoviePass back, and people sitting at home asking for it. It was like, what? And this wasn't even when we knew it was back as an option. They were like posting videos, and it was like, it had struck a chord. It had done something in the movie landscape. And I think if we can just stay focused, I know it'll sound cliche, but I have to say this to myself. If this is the best it gets, if it doesn't become $1 billion business, okay. But we showed up, we got it back, and we went and we tried again.
I have a question over here.
How you doing? Always love to hear you talk, but this presentation was heartfelt for me because of my empathy. I worked at Urban World as a volunteer for 11 years, and I'm happy that I never got a salary from you. My question to you is that, are you a coder?
No. I can't write a line of code, but I just admire people who can, and I wish I could.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you for doing this. This was wonderful. I've admired your career for probably 10 years or more. When MoviePass started, I just thought it was phenomenal and saw the ups and downs through everything. And you spurned, or you, not spurned, you spurred on the whole industry. After MoviePass went down the first time, then all the other chains, like AMC and Regal and all that stuff, essentially created their own MoviePass. What's wonderful about yours was that you didn't have to choose one chain or the other. It might not matter if you're in suburbia like me, but if you're in the city and you have all these options, it's like a fantastic option that you do. But now that everybody's created it, how are you? Are they? How do they let you into to their ecosystem now that they've created their own?
Great question. So, second part, just like the first time they didn't let us in, that was the beauty of MoviePass is you can go wherever you want because we give you the card that lets you go wherever you want. So that's still the case. So there's what's different this time is there's a universe of partner theaters that do we go straight into the API so you can get your ticket right in the app. And then the non-partners like the AMC's of the world, you're going to use your card and go up to the theater. So that didn't change. But before we began this part of the journey, we were like, how is this going to be different in the marketplace? And what you said is kind of the answer. We think that there's, if you just want to go to one circuit, we're not for you. But the data was on the old MoviePass. The average person goes to 3 different types of theaters. And somebody asked me about music, and they talked about listening to different music in different type of venues. And movies are very similar. What you go see at the Angelica is different than what you're going to go see at, say, Sinopolis, and that's different than what you're going to go see at IMAX, right? And the movies are very different. If you put Lady Bird on IMAX, it's not going to feel right. But if you put Avatar at Angelica, that doesn't feel right. So what we know is you want to see different things in different arenas for different reasons, and that's where we think we're a better product for people like us who like that variety. But if you're that once a month person and you're just going to the local AMC in your town, we're probably not going to be for you. So we think there's not a either or, there's an and in the market that the consumer has lots of choice. Don't give him the microphone.
Good evening, Stacy.
Good evening, Lauren.
Good brother. Thankful, obviously, for how bold you are in every aspect of your life. You let a young 20-something salesman join your board almost 10 plus years ago, and so I'm grateful for that. I think about the universe typically when you're thinking product market fit, who is our audience? I think about this larger issue around the issue of loneliness and disconnection, and how sometimes as human beings we don't know what is best for us. And so technology has pushed a self-sufficiency existence that I don't need to leave my house. How much of your work is we need to deliver to our core customer, but we also have an obligation to be a part of the conversation about why it's important to still leave your house to gather with other human beings?
That's such a great question, Lawrence. Thank you. And thank you for all your service that you've done for Urban World, for me, and our community, and your dinner parties and all of that fun stuff. Okay, great guy. I love your question because it lets me talk about one of the best stories ever. And I'm going to work on not crying during this story. So back in MoviePass 1, people would write emails or letters thanking us for the service. And there was a Gulf War veteran who came back from the war. He had PTSD and other things. His marriage fell apart, everything. And either some friends or someone got him a MoviePass. And he started going out of his house, And he said he had not left his home for like 2 years, other than like going to the grocery stores or something like that. And he started going back to the movies and getting out and being around other people. And he talked about how being able to go and sit in the movies and not being worried about the expense let him have this outlet. And he started to mix with people again, and he started to date. And he said, I believe you saved my life. He said, I was contemplating suicide. I didn't see a reason to live anymore. And I believe the product that you people are making is saving people other than just me. Don't stop. I'll never forget reading that email, and I still wish I had the paper. Or, when they closed me out of my account, it was an email that I wish I'd never lost. And another version of that was this couple that the wife wrote us a letter and said, my husband and I have fallen into a trap where he would sit on his iPad and I would sit on my iPad, and we grew apart. And she goes, we got MoviePass for Christmas and we've started to date again. Thank you for saving our marriage. It's like, what do you say to that? So thank you for that question, Lawrence.
So you talked about that moment when you walked into the Lowe's theater and you had your BlackBerry and you pressed on it and the ticket came out, and it was like you saw, that was like your aha moment that it worked, right? And now fast forward, we don't have BlackBerries like you said. We have these crazy cell phones. We have AI like you talked about. I mean, the future is changing. I mean, people now, like with COVID, went out and bought 65-inch televisions and are making movie theaters in their homes. So what do you feel? I mean, again, you can't foresee the future, but is there something that you think or you foresee as maybe that innovation, that technology that really is going to take this to a different level? That, I mean, the stories that you just told, I would use those for, commercials now, because people were all home from COVID and probably could, that's how you market. When I sent you that thing from the Oscars the other night, they said, this is where we should be, watching movies again in the theater. But so what do you see that as that bar of what's going to maybe be that new MoviePass?
I think it's low tech. I think, Pamela, thank you, by the way. I think it's low tech. I think one of the things we talked about in MoviePass 1 was inviting a friend. We hadn't built the tech into it that you could like invite somebody or bring a friend. But there's that senior or that person that's in their house. And a lot of seniors, their grandkids got them movie passes, and they would write us and they would talk about it. And so I think it's a low-tech solution, but somebody said to me, well, with COVID and 65-inch television, isn't the movie industry dead? And I said, why didn't anybody say that about the music industry? Like, are we not going to go to Taylor Swift concerts anymore? We're just going to watch her on HBO or something? Or are we not going to go to a sporting event anymore, right? And the reality is we like to. Did anybody see Megan? Wasn't that fun to see with the crowd? It's like, did anybody see Cocaine Bear yet? You have to go see it with a group of people. It's insane. There's no way that if you saw that, a Home Alone, that it's the same experience. Did anybody see Nope in theaters? I love the part where she's like, nope, and the whole audience is like, no. Like, it's like, how do you, so there are people like us who like to leave our house and go spend some time with a lot of other strangers that are just like us. And we're movie people. You cut me, I bleed cinema. And it's like, when I'm happy, I'm in the movies. When I'm sad, I'm in the movies. They transport me places. They change your life. They give me empathy. I get to sit in the Angelica and travel around the world and see stories in people's lives that I would never, ever get to experience. And I like that cinema also has a degree of programming, that it's vetted through so many hands that when you see something, do you know what I spend most of my time on Netflix doing? Trying to figure out what to watch. And I never get to make a decision. And I go, oh, but I'll go to the theater and the lights go down and I have no idea what's going to happen. And I love that feeling. So.
We have one last question back here. This is the last question of the night.
Hi, Stacy. It's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, something that I really appreciate about like your history is your unique ability to match like a business need with like a cultural need, right? Like you tend to create a lot of cultural impact with your products and services. So is that something that you think of ahead of time? Like, do you also think about these other cultural needs of your target audience, or does that just spontaneously happen?
That is a really good question. I don't know. Well, the answer is yes and no. I don't think I think of it first, but I do because I am a marketer. I think of a base. Do I have a base at which to launch from? If I were a woman, are women my base? If I'm a black man, is people of color my base? So I do come from my base first. I think of it because I think, who can I invite? Like, who can I send this to that might get excited about it, that might be part of my home team, and then spread out from there. And it'll start in my house with my wife. It'll start with maybe my family and a few friends. And then the very first festival that ever had MoviePass as a sponsor was Urban World. We put a little table up, and that was the very first place we signed up customers, because we had something that we could start with. And so there was this following inside of the Urban World community that was there first. So I don't think I think about it, but there is a common sense, like I need to start from someplace, and that's kind of where it comes from. So thank you for that question.
We have one more special component of this event, right? Come on over, Elena.
So as you all probably know, we had decided that we were going to give away 2 full-year movie passes to one of you lucky people, and I'll let you pick, Genna. Genna, no, you're going to pick.
Oh, God.
And Jenna's going to pull the lucky winner.
I'm sorry. This is a lot of pressure, and it is not a privilege. You want me to read the number? Yeah. 678807. Oh.
Congratulations. So we're going to get all your info, and you got 2 full 1-year movie passes. So congrats.
Thank you. We are going to have, Stacy's going to go sign some books, and that is it. Thank you, everyone,
Let's
for
give
coming.
a round of applause.
Stacy, thank you.
All. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for coming. If you would like to get your book signed, my colleague Tico is standing at the speaker. Please line up beside Tico. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't gotten a book yet, there are more for sale at the registers. Have a good night.